gentlemen, welcome to Rebels Without a Pod, episode 38. My name is Andrew. Let's start over. I forgot. I was reading off my notes over here and I completely missed it. Okay, we're gonna start fresh. Let's try again. And good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode 38 of Rebels Without a Pod, the show that dares ask the question, what's wrong with being sexy?
That's right.
Yeah.
Question.
My name's Andy.
Sexist Nigel, you had a woman down on all fours.
So I'm Andy, and joining me tonight is our good friend Johnny, who does our planning and research.
Hello.
Johnny's voice is a little off today, so he is not doing the moderating. It's my job this evening. So
should we point out that hello is actually a recording? He has a recorder in front of him, and he has some catchphrases that he's pre-recorded, so he'll be playing them throughout the episode.
That's right.
I got 3 catchphrases plus an air horn on this thing.
Nice. It'll be like the morning zoo. Naveen on music and audio production.
Hello.
And Pod Daddy Eric, aka Mr. Awesome's Guide to Girls.
Whoa! Johnny, I was going to say you sound a little sick today. Do you want the biddy? You want the biddy, John? Would you like the biddy? You like the biddy, wouldn't you?
He took Biddy, and Biddy made him strong. Should we clarify up top how many people watch that South Park?
I think only 2 people.
Yeah.
I think only 2 people on this particular stream.
Okay, then this is going to be an average episode of the show. But anyway,
Yeah, sounds about right.
It'll be the usual.
So
Biddy.
So this week we are starting off, for crying out loud. We're starting off our new cycle, which is basically video games that have been turned into movies, video game adaptations. And we've each, as we mentioned before, we've each selected a movie for this cycle. And today's movie was actually selected by Johnny. And we'll get into what it is later. And Johnny can kind of struggle through his voice a little bit to let us know why he selected it. But first, what I want to do is ask each one of you guys here in 2025, what are video games to you? What do they mean to you? Do they fit into your lives? Are they an important part of your lives, or a distant memory?
That's a good question.
Yeah, for me, it's just fun little games like solitaire, or some other, puzzle type games on the phone or tablet. But it's not as big as it used to be. But I was never a big gamer in the first place. I did have some games that I really loved, and I know we're going to talk about some of those later. But in 2025, it's not that big. Just a couple little games here and there. No consoles anymore or anything of that sort.
Naveen, it was an interesting sort of the choice, I thought, by you for us to kind of do a cycle on video game movies, because thinking about it, all the guys I know kind of personally like around our age, probably the 3 that play video games the absolute least that I can think of would be you, your brother, and my brother. So I thought, the fact that you wanted to kind of do this as a theme and as a cycle was kind of interesting.
Your brother, by the way, John, has no excuse. Apple picking season's over, bud.
He will watch anything on Netflix.
Yeah.
Get an Atari.
Part of me that picked this theme it is kind of cool because some of the games I have played or know about that I've seen turned into movies, but also knowing what you guys are, I thought it'd be a really good, interesting take, just knowing with the majority of you guys that are bigger into gaming than I am, and then seeing how it turned into, some of them turn into movies, or they tried to turn them into movies.
Yep. All right, let me jump on.
What about you, Eric?
So, I hadn't played games for quite a bit. Busy with work, kids stuff. This past winter break, I took some time off. I was going to spend time relaxing and doing whatnot, and I got the flu. So, as a result, halfway through, I'm like, you know what? I owe it to myself. I went up to my attic. So in 2017, I decided when I started coming into a little money from work, I was going to buy every Nintendo game I played when I was a kid, which turned into I'm going to collect every single Nintendo game that, was ever made, which is impossible because some of them go for like $20,000. So it's not a reasonable hobby. But I think I reached that point where I'll get some rare ones. I'll get some that I rented a lot when I was younger. I ended up with about 200 games, and then I sold a bunch because I wasn't going to play them, and I got it down to about a cool 155. So this winter break, I brought the Nintendo downstairs, all my games, and my older son Caleb, he doesn't care about video games. He's like, he just does phone games. That's all he cares about. Ray was like, well, what are you playing? And I'm like, well, I'm going to play this game called Punch-Out, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. And he saw part of the fight, the Mike Tyson fight last year.
Jake Paul, that one?
Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. And so he's like, oh, awesome. You get to be Mike Tyson. I'm like, oh, no. He's like the final boss. And if he hits you one time, you get knocked down. And that's it. So he's like, that sounds awesome. So he ended up playing. And he made it up to, I think, Don Flamingo, maybe. So he did pretty well. But it was like the thing that's great is it's different than him playing Fortnite all the time where you just jump into chaos. It was all like you got to learn patterns. You got to understand, what's going to potentially be thrown at you and how you can respond to it. When's the right time to throw uppercuts and stuff like that. So it was really cool to see, it's a different kind of thing. We ended up playing Contra, Ninja Gaiden. He loved ice hockey and then the Zapper games. He loves Duck Hunt. There's another called Gunsmoke where it's like a standoff, a Mexican standoff, which is pretty good. So I started playing those a lot lately.
Nice.
I also like video games for me now. Nowadays, I buy stuff on Switch, never get around to playing it. I probably have a library of a few hundred games. But I love horror games. So whenever new ones come out, like the Silent Hill 2 remake or any of the Resident Evil ones that they put out, I always pick those up. I don't usually play through all of them, but whenever I get a free, space of time, I'll hop on those and try to do them. I will say the last game that I played that I really enjoyed was the Final Fantasy VII remake. It's old now because that was 4 years ago. They have the new one, Rebirth, out now, and that's in my queue. I love to play it. I know once I start, it's just going to be 50, 60 hours gone out of my life. But that's where I've kind of ended up lately.
What about you, Johnny?
I sort of kind of fell off kind of serious video game playing probably a few years ago when I was living in New York City, and I was getting a little bit kind of not just kind of burnt out on work, but sort of burnt out on screen time. The whole having this hobby of kind of doing what I do so professionally, sitting in front of a computer, sitting in front of the screen and the blue light the entire time. And then the idea of kind of coming home and then having dinner and playing another 2 or 3 hours of gamings before I went to bed, which is kind of the minimal that you can kind of it's the minimal. It sort of felt like you needed to invest in something kind of serious kind of console games to kind of really sort of get something out of the titles you're messing with. I'm like, this can't possibly be a healthy thing or a satisfying thing. So it was around then I kind of pivoted to being more into the board gaming hobby. And because of that, and that's something that has kind of replaced what video games were for me before in terms of a thing I kind of enjoy learning about, and in terms of a thing that I kind of enjoy doing with my friends. It's a version of the gaming hobby that I feel is still kind of scratches some of those itches when you kind of want to do something social or to have challenges or to kind of just put a really kind of interesting puzzle in front of you. But it's also analog. You're also, it's time away from a screen where you kind of do where you're working with something sort of tangible, and you're looking and you're looking at the people that you're playing with. You're actually looking them in the face instead of all of you just kind of staring kind of slack shot into a TV and into the TV together. But for me, kind of occasionally for video games, I'll kind of dip my toe into I sort of small occasionally I'll play sort of a small independent. I still particularly kind of 90s point and click style like adventure games, and like which is still a pretty pretty kind of verdant genre these days, with kind of like the ascension of kind of Steam and self-publishing and like like the indie video game development world, and all sort of like the different kind of resources and kind of tooling are right now. But those are games that are kind of made by sort of very small teams, artistic, creative, and things that you can kind of knock out in like 2 to 3 hours. And those are pretty much for me at that point. That's the only thing I'll sort of like dip my toe into, unless there's something really, really special out there that I want to be serious about.
So you're saying avoid the Sierra point and click games? Is that
yeah. Just LucasArts 92 era on. You don't need to type in a bunch of things just to get eaten by an alligator.
Yeah, I know. Let's go swimming. There's water. It's probably really fun.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's like acid.
Instant death in any of those Sierra
Instant
titles.
Death.
Right.
Dysentery.
Yeah, I mean, I during COVID, I kind of went back into playing video games. We have a PS5 that my son uses, and I started playing toward the end of COVID, and then got a little too into it post COVID when everybody was starting to get back to work. I was too busy down in the basement playing GTA 5, creating my empire.
Weren't you also into that cowboy game for a bit? I think.
Yeah. I played Red Dead Redemption 2 for a while, and like a lot of things. I played Hitman, which is a movie we're going to talk about later in the cycle, and there's other games too. Last of Us. Like there's a bunch that I played during that period of time, and admittedly I thoroughly enjoyed them to the point where it was, like I said, it was like all consuming. I was doing too much of it, so I had to quit. I quit cold turkey. I haven't played a video game except here and there, like I'll go down and play something with Charlie, or whatever. But
like first person shooters or
no. I mean, Charlie likes those. I typically like if I was gonna sit down and pick a game, I like kind of third person open world, like
a Fallout or something like that.
Yeah, adventure type. Yeah, exactly. Where I can kind of choose my own adventure. Some days you feel like going and shooting zombies, and other days you just want to go and
you really like the open world sandbox, kind of do what you're feeling like doing in that particular day.
Yeah, those are my favorites for sure. So but at this point in my life, it's just like you said, Johnny, like you have to spend too much time in order to really get something out of those games. And so I don't really have it. Video games now are basically just random sounds that come out of the basement, followed by, muffled expletives that, Charlie, because he didn't have his 6 covered by his buddy or something like that. And he got, double tapped in the back of the head, that kind of stuff.
You guys have Switch, right? Did you?
We do have a Switch, yeah.
Did you play like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom? Yeah.
I was
gonna say that was one I spent way too much time on. Like Breath of the Wild I beat. But Tears of the Kingdom, I think I got like 75 hours in. And then I was like, it's like one of those moments where after 75 hours, you just kind of stop and like reassess, and you're like, 75 hours. That's like a lot of time.
That's
like
a lot of time.
I could have built a chair or maybe several chairs at that point.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
could have connected with my son.
Right.
Yeah, I could clean my gutters and then had enough time to have a cool lemonade.
Yeah, I loved Breath of the Wild. I tried to play Tears of the Kingdom. I think I maybe got about an hour and a half into it, and I was like, you know what? I don't have this in me. I just don't have this in me again.
It's fun. The crafting thing, though, you get so absorbed in it because they set up a situation for you, and it's pretty obvious what you need to do in terms of the crafting part of it. They introduce like some new mechanism. You're like, okay, I'll put this together, and then I'll make like a little like hovercraft and kind of fly along. But every one of those opportunities, I saw it the opposite way. I'm like, I'm going to break this. Like, it wants me to do this. I'm not going to fucking do it. I'm going to do the opposite. And then I turn it into like, it's a hovercraft. And then I'm like, okay, I'll take like 2 gliders, stick them together. They both have wheels. And then, I just put like a bunch of like propellers on it or something like that. And just spins in a circle. And then I just kind of glide off. I'm like, hup, hup, and just kind of glide off and land down the other side.
Eric is like those like failed Italian airplane engineers that all sort of came before the Wright brothers. It's just everything ends up with him crashing into the ocean.
Yep. Yep.
Give me your blanket, darling. I swear it will glide me.
So because I got back from Japan recently, and I've been pretty sick, and I've also been extremely jet lagged. So it's just I've been sleeping all day. I've been like living like a fucking raccoon. Just I cannot eat any more Hot Pockets. Like it's not a civilized way to be. But to try to pass like a little bit of time. This is kind of jumping ahead like a little bit, but I downloaded the latest Hitman game on my PlayStation 4 and tried like messing with it a bit, and I've been enjoying it. But I have my notes for today's movie next to me, and at one point I wrote down verbatim, modern sandbox games, quote, "You're just trying to mind fuck me into wasting my time." So I think it's just being in their 40s and even kind of trying to kind of dip your toe in like video games like these. There's always this kind of push pull of just like this is fun, but at the same time, what am I actually doing?
Yep.
Dude, I am shocked that the PlayStation 4 store is still open. That's a thing.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I would sit there and I'd play for hours on end, and then I'd look at the clock and be like, I accomplished nothing in real life today. Like, yeah, maybe I got another $1 million or something like that, but I accomplished absolutely nothing.
I was going to say the rewarding thing is when you have a girlfriend or you're married, you can play all that time, and afterwards you're like, I still got somebody.
Well, sure. Yeah, I got nobody to impress at this point.
Even for your flaws, it's fine. They put up with some of shenanigans.
Baby, I'm out here defending your honor.
I think Hillary was going to leave me if I didn't stop playing.
What you do in Tears of the Kingdom, you just craft like a heart and just hold it up. Link's like, aw. She's like, just turn it off. You spent like 3 hours building that.
Yeah.
Could have made dinner, put the kids to bed.
So
read to your son.
And then had a nice cool lemonade.
Had a nice cool lemonade. You could have had 2 lemonades. That first one was so refreshing. Go for number 2.
Go for an Arnold Palmer.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. I think John would go for Biddy. You like Biddy, Johnny?
Biddy.
Yeah.
Here for the cough syrup.
Moving swiftly along, we're going to leave Biddy behind, at least until the next time. So I guess at this point, we can reveal that we're doing The King of Kong today. That is our movie that we watched. And before we get into the movie, I figured I'd give a little synopsis of the video game itself for those that have lived under a rock since 1981. Donkey Kong is a 1981 platforming arcade game published by Nintendo and conceived by first-time designer Shigeru Miyamoto, who would later go on to create or produce, among others, Super Mario Bros., Duck Hunt, The Legend of Zelda, Excite Bike, F-Zero, Star Fox, Pilot Wings, Yoshi's Island, Luigi's Mansion, Eternal Darkness, Wii Sports, Wii Fit, and Pikmin. I mean, the dude was just prolific. It was originally intended actually as a Popeye game. After Nintendo lost the license, Bluto, Olive Oil, and Popeye were reskinned as Donkey Kong, Pauline, and Mario. This was actually his first ever appearance in a video game. The game was considered revolutionary for its time, with story and mechanics that unfold progressively over a series of boards. Ports of the original arcade game have collectively sold over 15 million copies, with worldwide revenue estimated around $4.4 billion with a B dollars. And this doesn't even include the unlicensed ports and knockoffs. 18 more titles were produced in the Donkey Kong franchise, and the titular ape also has appeared in countless other video games, TV shows, and movie adaptations. So, little beginnings into just massive success over the course of 40 plus years.
Yeah.
So that being said, I guess kind of going back into kind of our own lives with video games, what are your favorite 80s arcade games that you guys have played? And I just to expand this a little bit, I included sort of more console games as well from that time because I didn't spend a lot of time in arcades back in that at that point. So I'm including Nintendo games, Atari games, that kind of stuff as well.
Right. Naveen and I basically kind of grew up in the forest, so like arcades were sort of like a pretty rare thing. For us.
Yeah.
Rocks and sticks.
Yeah, kind of.
Did Don throw actual barrels at you? You had a hammer or like a mallet, and you just tried to hit them, and then you just got run over by the barrel. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Look, it was a way to spend a Saturday. What do you want?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that was one of my questions, whether it was just like specifically going to the arcade kind of games or on the consoles. So thank you for clarifying that. But then to Johnny's thing, I did grow up a little bit in the next town over, and they had an arcade, OP arcade, that we went to often. And even there was times when we moved into our new town there, New Hartford, that my brothers and I, we weren't supposed to, but we would ride our bikes from there to the arcade and go play.
Sweet. Which play?
Yeah, that was mostly before we, met friends and had friends there when we had just first moved there, the first couple of years.
What kind of games are you playing?
Well, for me, in the arcade, and I had to look this one up because I thought it was 90s, but it was like right on the brink of 90s. It was Final Fight. I loved.
Yeah, that was 89. I checked that one too.
Yeah, I was like, no,
I love that game.
Was 90s. But it was 89, so it was along the lines of Double Dragon. So both those games were always fun.
Yep.
But Final Fight was a big one. Contra was a huge one for me. Donkey Kong, Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man were pretty good. I know Frogger was really huge.
I played tons of Frogger.
Frogger, Spy Hunter, I enjoyed playing. I did enjoy Q*bert. I know that's in the movie too, and I was like, Q*bert. That was a great one. I remember Atari Warriors. Played that one a little bit, and then there was Life Force that I loved a lot, which was basically
nice.
Contra and ships and spaceships. Excite Bike was good. Moonwalker, Rampage was a big one.
Oh, I forgot about that one. That one was fantastic.
Yeah,
loved Rampage.
Yeah, I like Spy vs. Spy, and then of course can't forget Tetris.
Dude, you were busy.
Yeah.
Yep, all good calls. A lot of those were on my list too. Eric, what about you?
To add to that, I played a bunch of those games. I also loved let's see. So my parents had a Commodore 64, and they would only buy me like classics 80 games. So I still remember like Frogger. I play Frogger. It's so shitty. The graphics are awful. You don't even know it's a frog. It looks like a turtle.
I played that one too.
Did you? Yeah.
Commodore 64.
Oh man, it's so when he gets like hit by like a car or something like that, it's not like and then he just dies. It just looks like he just gets like smattered pixels all over the screen.
Yeah.
Disgusting. I used to love though Galaga. I don't know. Did you mention Galaga?
I did not mention Galaga. That was okay for me.
Dragon's Lair was one that I would always play, and I sucked at it. I was so bad at it. It was just that's the one with like the
famously a really difficult game to actually play or do anything.
You see that little yellow light, and it's supposed to direct you where to go in a scene, and they're always changing scenes. By the way, it's skipping throughout the game, so it starts you at the beginning of the level. Unless you know what to do, a little light will appear at a certain time, and if you don't move your character in that direction at that time, you just get killed instantly. And I think you get like 3 lives per try. It's deeply frustrating, but the artwork is amazing.
I believe that was Don Bluth who actually did.
It was Don Bluth,
yeah. And when you had like those original arcade cabinets, the game itself, I believe, would be played off of a laser disc they had sitting inside the machine.
It's possible. They re-released the games later on Laserdisc. Those one, the first one, second one, and Space Ace.
I remember being totally fascinated by that game and playing it just a few times, never being able to figure out what to do. But the artwork was just drew me in, and I loved the artwork of it, and I could never figure out the game. It always frustrated me.
I was going to add too. I was looking up years for when stuff was made. So like I played Ghost and Goblins, Karnov, Rastan. I love this game called Kid Nicky. It was so fun. It's just like I had it at the local Papagenos. near my house. They would have it, so I go there and play while my dad's picking up pizza. And yeah, ninja running around. You do your shuriken or your blade or whatever, and such a fun game. The one game that I didn't also I guess it came out 89 also was the first Ninja Turtles game.
Mm-hmm.
That was right on the cusp.
That
And,
game was fun until the underwater level.
Oh, you're talking about the Nintendo one? I was thinking the arcade one, but yeah.
Oh, the arcade one was awesome. But yeah, the
Turtles
the
in
initial,
Time, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
And
That
then
first
really,
Nintendo game was a nightmare, though.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah. And about the Ninja game that just reminded me of Ninja Gaiden. I remember.
Yep.
Gaiden, yeah. Andy, I didn't ask you, but did you have your Nintendo Power subscription handy to help you through that level?
You know, I never had Nintendo Power.
Oh man,
Neither did I.
Yeah.
that was a birthday present for me. The
Nope.
first issue came out, I was like, "What is this? It's amazing!" And then I was like, "Mario too."
Mm.
Yep. No, I never had that. My parents were
I'm
always
sorry.
my parents were always a little hesitant to spend money on Nintendo stuff.
Yeah.
Once in a while, I would convince them to buy me a game, and I was famous for just picking the game based on the cover art.
Yeah.
And then I would get it home and be like, "Wow, this is awful.
Right.
This sucks.
This game is just
Ooh.
terrible."
Spider-Man and Sinister Six. That must be amazing.
Mhm.
And it's like Spider-Man just kind of plops around, and it's like, is that Electro? I have no idea. Maybe it's something. So many.
There was a game that I got. I remember getting it at Toys R Us KB rather in the Hanover Mall, and I can't to this day I can't remember the name of it, but I remember the cover distinctly, and it had this big muscly warrior on the front, and you know he was kind of like a blue motif throughout the whole thing, and I remember just being like, this is the game for me. I'm gonna love this. And I distinctly remember my dad saying to me, "Are you sure? Are you sure this is one that you want?"
Right.
And me being like 100%, getting it home, starting to play it, and being like, this is just terrible.
Do you remember anything about like the game itself? Was it like a medieval warrior, or was this kind of like a
it was a medieval warrior, and it was one of those like your bird's eye view of it kind of thing. I'm sure if I saw the cover of it, I would know it instantly.
Blue Muscle, is it Iron Sword? It's not.
No.
Iron Sword.
No, I can't remember what it is. It'll come to me at some point.
I'm going to make a note to kind of research that as like a way to kind of pass my jet lag for the next few days. I
had really good luck picking Nintendo games back in the day. I feel like I must have been doing some kind of research or something was guiding me, because I still remember going to it can't have been an Ocean State job lot maybe, right. And they were selling Nintendo games, and my mom's like, "Which one do you want?" And then I looked at like that emaciated guy with like a blue tracksuit with like a gun in his hand, and I'm like, "That's the one." Then she's like, "Mega Man." What's Mega Man? And I was like, "I don't know. It just looks cool. I want it."
Yeah.
And so that's when I got, and I still have it. It's hard as hell, but
this was the first Mega Man, right?
First Mega Man.
The first Mega Man with famously really, really terrible box art.
Like, the one in the UK wasn't much better. I think he was just like all silver. It looks like a Robot Man, like it's an android or something. He's just like all silver with at least he had a blaster.
Right.
What about you, Johnny?
Excuse me. It was interesting kind of thinking about for like the movie we're going to discuss, like it's a generation that kind of came before us like a little bit. So I didn't have a ton of context for like some of these older games like Q*bert or Galaga, or I don't think I've ever actually played Donkey Kong at all. But we did not get a Nintendo in our house until relatively late, and my parents, looking back very intelligently, were like, "You can play this an hour a day on Saturday, an hour a day on Sunday, but that's pretty much going to be it, like the entire time."
Did that coincide with your cartoon watching time, or was that two separate things?
Two separate things. Hour and a half of cartoons Saturday morning, 2 hours of video games for the weekend, and that was it. Like otherwise, and it was, looking back, like a pretty smart parenting, because if I had been left to my own devices on that would have just been just wake up at dawn and kind of play things till about midnight for me. Like I was so completely obsessed back in the the day.
Did they ever like give you like an ultimatum? Like, John, you can play games, or not ultimatum, but like they would bribe you where it's like, you can play games, but you have to pick like 200 apples today or something like that.
Oh, by the time we actually got to the actual apple picking, there was money involved.
Oh, was there? Yeah.
Yeah.
What'd you use your money on if you weren't using it on video games?
Probably buying video games, honestly.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there was a bit of a more complex economy.
I get
it was all towards like an end goal.
Nice.
The only thing I remember we had at home, because like I said, just Naveen and I kind of grown up in the countryside like a little bit. I did not really spend too much time in arcades. We did, however, have a Coleco Midway Pac-Man mini arcade when I was growing up, like a box about this big that you could play a pretty good, pretty intact like version like Pac-Man on. And I looked it up recently. These things go for like about $115 on eBay currently. I don't have a ton of personal fascination with kind of like this sort of like early 80s kind of really kind of classic retro or like first year kind of like Nintendo titles, but like Pac-Man, there's always been something kind of compelling and interesting and kind of fun about it to me. It's having like kind of that little kind of battery powered machine growing up. And then by the time I was like a bit older and I could actually kind of go to arcades with my friends every once in a while, what arcades kind of had kind of migrated from was from kind of like these single screen kind of more sort of puzzly kind of experiences to what Naveen and Eric have kind of mentioned, like the side scroller things. Personal favorites, Turtles in Time was like a very big one. The X-Men game was absolutely kind of huge for me, and like I remember at what was Riverside Park back in the day. I think it's like New England Six Flags currently, but they had the Simpsons side-scrolling arcade game there, and that was the only arcade game I ever actually played all the way through and rolled the credits on.
Same.
Yeah.
Same. Yep. My buddy and I, we went to Waterville Valley up in New Hampshire to ski one weekend. His parents had a timeshare, and they had a rec room kind of across the way, and they had that Simpsons game in there. And I remember taking quarters down there and spending an entire evening playing from beginning to end, the two of us. It was a 2-player game, right?
Four?
Or 4 anyway. Yeah, it was a multiple player game. Yeah, I remember the two of us playing it from start to finish and going through just so many goddamn quarters to get to the end of it. But yeah, that game was awesome.
Yeah. Did you so there exists an arcade 1-up Simpsons game?
No.
Am I talking nonsense? So arcade 1-up, what they do is they make home arcades, you can build it. They send you everything to build an arcade unit at your house. And they have one for Simpsons. And it comes with like a Simpsons like designed stool that you can sit on when you play, but it allows for 4 people to play at the same time. They also have another one that's for Ninja Turtles arcade game and Turtles in Time. I actually have one at my house, which is Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And then it has all the versions of Marvel vs. Capcom that came out before that. So they're super fun. But the Simpsons one, I heard a lot of people don't like it. I think it gets like 3 stars typically online. Mm-hmm. And the reason is because it only has that one game on that unit. So once you play it, you're kind of like, that was fun. Nostalgia was great, but there's nothing else the system offers. So you play it once or twice and then you just kind of let it sit there.
I've never heard of Arcade 1-Up. I'm going to have to check that out. That sounds kind of awesome, actually.
You go on Facebook Marketplace. There's so many people that are selling them for about $300, which I think is maybe $200 off the store price, just because of that same reason. They buy it, it just sits there. But if you have like a game room or something like that, it's great.
That's fun.
Can't you mod them so you can have like a billion games on it?
You could do that. Some people will do. It's not like your typical arcade unit where it has like a circuit board or whatever. Right. I think it's just ROMs. So like
Raspberry Pi or something, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sure you could configure it to, there's probably tons of forums that tell you how to do that. You can order online something to install like, whatever, X many games.
That's cool. For me, I guess just to close up that question, like a lot of the games you guys mentioned were definitely ones that I played. I did back down the one that I bought. It was called Deadly Towers. That game was a real stinker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Famously really, really bad.
Yep, that was terrible, but the cover was awesome, so I bought it. And I, back then, I think Nintendo games were, 40, 50, $60, something like that, which was, is a lot of money now, but like back then it was a lot of freaking money.
Yeah.
So, but like, and Contra was my all-time favorite. I loved Excite Bike, but I also liked sports games a lot. So like Tecmo Bowl, I played the hell out of Tecmo Bowl.
Sure.
Blades of Steel was awesome.
Blades of Steel, that's right.
I actually just got that in the mail yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I never played it when I was younger, and then I saw somebody on Mercari was selling a bunch of games cheap, so I'm like, oh, it has Blades of Steel, and I watched the video. I'm like, that looks fun.
Yeah.
And I have that queued up. I'm going to play that one.
Wasn't that you can get in fights in Blades of Steel and be like,
yeah. I just had regular ice hockey. You get the fat guy, the skinny guy, and then
ice hockey was fun too. I had ice hockey. But I did not have Blades of Steel. My friend had Blades of Steel, so I played ice hockey at my house all the time and loved it. And still to this day would play it and be perfectly happy doing so. But yeah, I used to get really excited when I could go play Blades of Steel. Paperboy too. Paperboy was another one.
It's such a shitty game.
It's awful, but I used to just have for some reason I loved it. Yeah, I don't know why.
As well.
I love watching reviews of the games, and then they kind of like break it up, and they're like, all those things that you kind of like, we're like, yeah, it's a game, it's fun. Like, it makes sense. There's a person on their backs, kind of bicycling their legs in the middle of their driveway. That's typical. Or like the Grim Reaper hanging out on the sidewalk. Yeah. Just delivering papers. That's what you run into.
An average Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And then you have to go through an obstacle course.
Yeah, obstacle course to get paid.
Yeah. Anyway, so but video games were definitely a big part of my come up. It sounds like everybody else's too. And then we got old and boring. What do you think it is about these games that people find appealing?
And with this question, I was kind of specifically thinking like the really old school stuff that's kind of depicted in like the movie that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'll say this compared to like playing newer games, the thing I love about this is why I always go back to Nintendo games now and then is I love how you can just jump right in the middle of a game. And it's easy to kind of learn and figure out what's going on. And then as you're adapting, you can develop strategies. You realize that boss fights, there's always like patterns and stuff like that you have to learn. So you'll get destroyed and you'll get really pissed off. And I think newer generation, they get turned off by it. They're like, this sucks. Like, what a shitty game. It's purposely hard. It's the graphics kind of suck. But for me, I'm like, I get killed and I'm like, start again. And then you play it again. And then you get to that point and then you try something different. And you keep trying all these different things and you figure it out. Or you just go and watch YouTube nowadays, I guess, to figure out how to do it. But yeah, it's so different. But I feel like it's so much more rewarding beating like a Nintendo game, which is, balls hard versus like, oh, I got a victory royale in Fortnite. Fuck yeah. Like,
yeah. Let's not forget too, like, back then in the early 80s when something like this came out, like that was peak technology. Like, now we look back on it and it looks cheesy and the graphics are terrible and whatever. But back then, I can only imagine it must have blown people's minds in the same way that a lot of the games today do. Like you look at them and you're like, I can't believe how real that looks. Not that Pac-Man ever looked real necessarily, but it was like, holy shit, like I'm controlling this thing like on a screen with a little joystick and I'm doing something with a computer. Like that had to blow people's minds. I think nowadays too, like, nostalgia paints a pretty rosy picture of things, but like it's also sort of reminiscent of just like a simpler time. You think back, like, you chase after white dots with some ghosts around a maze back and forth with very limited soundtrack, very limited, sound effects or whatever. Now you put that in front of today's kids, and like you said, they're like, this is fucking boring. Like, what are you talking about? I have to get white dots. Who cares?
I listened to this podcast, and it was funny because I remember somebody was talking, they're about our age, and they grew up playing Atari when they were younger. I mean, I played Atari when I was younger, and they finally got to play Ghosts and Goblins, and they're playing at the beginning, the night shooting, hitting the zombies. And then they got to the point where it's like the Red Devil. and then he just creams you, and they're like, shit, okay, that's the final boss. Like, I did it. Like, so now I just gotta figure out how to beat him. And once they got past him, they're like, there's more game. And that was the thing. Atari games were so short, and there was not much to them because, you know, you couldn't put much into that cartridge. So you'd put it on, you play for like, you know, a couple minutes, and you're like, that's the whole game right there. And then Nintendo, there was just so much more they could do with it. I remember, what was it? Final Fantasy role-playing game, and my mom played like 60 hours, and I'm like, how are you playing this game that long? Is there really that much there? And she's just like, well, it's insane because you can, you know, there's a whole world you can explore. And my mind was blown because I'm like, I grew up playing like Snoopy Red Baron on Atari. And I think there's like 3 levels where you're just shooting around, you know, trying to not get hit. And times change.
Not to step on the movie we're about to talk about, but you know, the Red Baron, man, he put up some numbers.
Yeah, he did. That guy, that American pilot, nobody knows his name.
That's right.
What I think about for like these retro arcade games is just, you know, they are small, they are simplistic looking, but you know, there's something about them that you can wrap your head around the entire thing, and then becomes about sort of the depth of like the gameplay as opposed to like the breadth of it. I mean, I'm not going to try to spend like in this conversation kind of too much kind of getting into like the programming, the software engineering side, the Donkey Kong stuff, but I did a ton of reading about like the game, like in the lead up to this, the entire Donkey Kong video game, and again, this is the thing that made $4.4 billion collectively, like since it was published back in '81. The whole game, the graphics, the sound, the gameplay, the animation, everything that it does fit into basically 16 kilobytes worth of memory. Just running on the board. For you know, just point of reference, the PDF of the notes that I had on this episode is about 42 kilobytes, so about triple the size like Donkey Kong itself. The copy of Hitman I downloaded for my PS4 a couple days ago was about 45 gig, so that puts it at a factor of about 3 million times bigger than like Donkey Kong itself.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
I would say I think ROMs are like what, 2 to 3 megabytes.
It's subjective to like the game itself.
I didn't ask, but did I don't know if we covered this. Did you guys play Donkey Kong like right before, like after watching this movie, or
No.
Don't think I've ever played it.
Wow.
Ever?
Wow.
Wow. I mean, I showed you guys. I did bring my cartridge, so this was a birthday, Christmas, something gift. I got Donkey Kong Classics for Nintendo. It has Donkey Kong Jr. I think the one I played the shit out of the most was Donkey Kong Jr. I just loved Donkey Kong, going across the vines, getting the fruit. I actually played this yesterday trying to see if Donkey Kong holds up, or like, how could I sit there 2.5 hours playing to try to beat a world record? And I couldn't beat the second level.
Yeah.
The first one, I'm like, yeah, that's easy. You're just kind of going up, you know, avoiding the barrels and stuff like that. That one's not too bad. But the second one, it's like, it has these little like, it's like climbing up the ladders. You avoid the fire, these little like elevator things going up and down. And then the what are they? Like not springs, but like the whatever they are, the little launch pads kind of shoot along and then they drop down. I can't. I tried to do Steve Weeby's strategy and look for the one that's kind of slightly to the right of the ladder, I think it is, and I couldn't time it at all.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell the difference watching that. When I was watching the movie, it's like, yeah, you just pick the one that's there, and it's like, they all look the same.
I know.
I don't know how you could see that tiny millimeter of a difference.
It's there, but they bounce so fast.
Right.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep up with it.
It just kind of makes me think of like those stories about like kind of those Korean kids who play League of Legends professionally, and they have to like retire at 21, 22 because when you get older than that, your reflexes like decay so much that even at that point you can't be competitive at a professional level with like that video game anymore.
Good God.
Yeah, I think Steve Weeby just had more than enough time on his hands because he clearly was not involved whatsoever in his family. So,
Oh, These kids are smart as hell.
We can get into it. How about we start talking about the movie itself?
Yes,
Sure.
let's do it.
All right, so let me give you the film synopsis. The King of Kong is a 2007 documentary by Seth Gordon, which follows a competition for the world record Donkey Kong score between unemployed engineer Steve Wiebe and mulleted hot sauce impresario Billy Mitchell. Synopsis in brief. This somehow became a $2 billion a year industry. Alternate, more like King of Shenanigans. Am I right?
Oh,
And alternate. Dad, wipe my butt. The film was released to critical acclaim. Keith Phillips, writing for the AV Club in his highly positive review, said, and I quote, "Without neglecting the details of a little scene subculture, Gordon harnesses his film into the unexpectedly thrilling story of an underdog attempting to buck a system structured at least partly around hushed cell phone conversations and backroom decisions. The film never loses sight of the personal stories here, from the seething aggression barely concealed in the way Mitchell says, 'son of a gun,' to the way Wiebe's wife can barely contain her tears when she talks about his following a dream she can't understand, one deadly barrel at a time."
oof. I love it.
Gentlemen, general impressions of the movie.
All right, just quickly, who's seen this before?
I have.
Nope.
I have to.
I think Andy's the only one.
Nope.
So,
This was my first.
Sweet.
and Andy, do you actually want to start with this because this is a new movie for you?
Sure. So, oh man, I would say I was
Be kind.
Yeah, well, yeah. I was left with the feeling of who gives a shit.
Okay.
I'd say that's
Is that all that's in your notes?
Well, I have notes for the follow-up questions, but I didn't even write down my general impression of the movie because seriously, I got to the end of it and I was like, I don't care even just one iota about what happened to these people, where they are today, who has the Donkey Kong Guinness World Records score. I don't care about any of that shit. I don't care. Go play your video game. Go have your mullet. Go sell your hot sauce and your large-breasted weird wife. Go, like, whatever, man. Go for
Sounds
it.
like a cake song. You're on your leather sofa.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm cynical. I just didn't care. I just didn't care.
Wow.
Well, just to put it out there, we are on a cycle of video game adaptations to movie, and this is a documentary, so it doesn't quite fit our cycle here. So it's kind of different in that regards.
Yeah, you're right.
But I mean, it really, to me, it really portrayed Mitchell as a douchebag. Sorry, I think you said be nice, Eric.
not to Billy. The movie.
It's like, all right, he got this high score, supposedly, and then it's like just rode his name to fame as best he could and did whatever he could to keep the name going, so he could sell his hot sauce and be like, my only 3 initials, you know what they are. You're not looking hard enough. You don't.
Yeah.
So he was the true, I guess, redneck with the mullet and the USA ties. So, hot sauce.
Oh yeah.
When you watch the movie a
So
second
good.
time, you can see like he's wearing different ties and different.
He
scenes.
does.
All
Yeah.
One has like the Statue of Liberty on it. One's just like a slice of the American flag.
What a dickhead.
USA.
Yeah, I don't know.
Japanese bitch.
What about you, Eric? What did you think of it?
I mean, I wasn't kind to this movie. I liked watching it, and I'll get into it maybe a little later. Some of the scenes I laughed out loud, but my take on this, the second time seeing it, it's very frustrating to watch. Like really frustrating. Immediately when they start introducing some of the players, like I think it's like, was it Steve Saunders, Brian Koo, Walter, all those people. I was like, look at all these fucking townies in this small town that are cringe. They have nothing to latch onto. They've done nothing with their lives. They're just suckling at Billy Mitchell's teat. You watch that, you see all these pathetic people, and then Steve Wiebe. I'm like, he's not off. I know people like him.
Yeah.
And they're very successful, like, doing like either doing engineering or something where it's just like OCD shit that they're extremely good at. I mean, even how Steve Wiebe was playing drums on his son's drum kit, I was like, look at this guy. He doesn't need to even, learn how to play drums, but like, fuck him. He's just like, he's got some time. He's just gonna, bash the shit out of those. But I was like, Steve Wiebe, I've had those moments before, and I'll talk about it later, but it's just like, you got some free time on your hands. You want to do something. You reassess your life. You want to do something big that might be memorable. And you also want to do it something that relates to you, something that you feel comfortable, that that you could give all yourself for. And he probably thought about good times when he was a kid, maybe going to the arcade, playing some Donkey Kong. And he's like, man, I love Donkey Kong. And I was really good at it too. Who's got the highest score? Maybe I can beat that. So I love that fact. And I mean, after seeing this movie, it kind of, made me want to play games again. But yeah, the parts of the movie where Billy's just submitting sketchy tapes and all that stuff, I'm like, man, it's fucking politics. It's just, I see it all the time with my son with sports and stuff like that, especially like in baseball and hockey and stuff. People pushing other kids, giving them opportunities people don't get. And Steve Wiebe coming in out of nowhere. Something I did learn, though, when I was doing research for Vigo's Toes for this, when they said that Steve Wiebe's score was, he had the highest score. He submitted that videotape and then negated it after they checked out his cabinet. Maybe they said in the film, I didn't realize it, but I guess the circuit board he was using that other guy gave him it wasn't a modded board, but it was a doubled up Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. board. So it wasn't an original Donkey Kong arcade unit board, and that's how they negated it. That was their reasoning, but it's all bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, who cares? Like,
yeah,
why should that matter?
John, your hot take.
All right. So I after rewatching this movie, I wrote this down. Over the weekend, I watched a business mogul with a fake patriot affect and dumb haircut, who initially came into prominence in the early 80s, run a campaign of lies, threats, and media manipulation from his Florida home in order to attain a global position of status, all while surrounded by sycophants, a plastic surgery-laden wife, and his lawyer best friend. I also watched the inauguration.
Could have gone either way with that one.
You did? Did they have live feed within the building, or
I pulled the Billy Mitchell there. I didn't
actually. Empty streets outside.
It's yeah, I don't know. Like I picked this movie, and like this is, like I said previously, this was like a bit of a zag from kind of like the theme that we're kind of doing, but I thought that this would be an interesting conversation, and also kind of like an interesting sort of like entree into what does it mean for. I mean, we talked a bunch. We just talked a bunch about this at the top of the pod. What does it mean to be a middle-aged guy with who's just playing video games, maybe like a little bit kind of too much, and kind of where would is this a at what point is this fun and kind of an entertaining hobby? At what point does this become a preoccupation? At what point does this distract you from the other things that you could be doing in your life? The thing after kind of watching this movie that kind of really stuck with me, kind of looking back on it, and why I really wanted to revisit was that this guy Wiebe, he's going up against people that really don't seem to have anything kind of going on in their life at all, other than these retro games and kind of playing for like these kind of like nominal high scores. Like this is a guy who had what seemed to be like a loving, cute, supportive family, and this is a guy who had sports talent and had musical talent and had artistic talent. And like the thing that that kind of like float around in my head with this after watching the movie the first time is like, out of all the things you could be doing with your free time, particularly having a supportive family and being talented in so many different ways, why this? Why fucking this? And that's like a big part of why I kind of wanted to sort of come back to and kind of talk about this movie.
I was going to say that the conclusion I had, especially after what you just said, is it's hard to make friends in your 40s.
True.
Look at us. We had to start a goddamn podcast.
Right?
Yeah. But
Yeah,
even the quote by his
daughter?
His daughter. Yeah.
Drop it.
Some people ruin their lives to be there. You know?
Yeah.
That's just a casual conversation in the car. How amazing is that? It's so cool, right? To be in
his 10-year-old, even his 10-year-old daughter is like, Dad, people just kind of this kind of thing fucks up people's lives. You know that, right?
She's like, do you know how many times I had to wipe my brother's ass because you were playing Donkey Kong? Way too many times.
I wrote this down, but like when like the part of the tape where Steve's son is screaming at him to get wiped, he's only at 600,000, and that was his 1 million-point game.
That's true. Yeah.
That kid did not get cleaned up for like another hour and a half mentally.
Yep. Do you guys think that what was portrayed on the screen is kind of the whole story? Did any of it feel off to you?
I watched a video talking about this a little, and people have different theories, and I kind of agree with the one that I think Billy has this persona. I mean, I don't think it's far-fetched. I think he's actually this kind of asshole. I think he punches it up a little for the camera, just because he wants to play the bad guy, maybe, or he wants to be like, I don't know, he's just being arrogant, I guess. But what I hear is that the director didn't intentionally try to make him the bad guy. It's always good to have like a bad guy, but he was trying to, build up the rivalry between the two. It's just tough because I guess even though he did some editing to try to make Billy sound less of an asshole, there's just so much content there where he's just talking out his ass that you really can't make him sound any better than he comes off.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
I think Weeby and Mitchell has said like the way it's depicted in the movie, like we were more congenial than that. But then you actually just you listen to Mitchell talk for more than kind of 20 seconds at the time, and it's still like that. That's nothing the camera is doing. That's nothing the editing is doing.
Yeah, he didn't prepare that ahead of time. Like, I'm going to be an asshole today. And also, too, I heard when people have seen him in person and met with him and stuff like that, they say he's a really nice guy. But a lot of the lines that he drops in the film, he actually repeats those. He recycles them pretty often. Like the whole thing with the Red Baron. I've heard he said that at conventions and stuff like that. Not because fans asked him to. It's just they're talking about games and he just loves mentioning that fact. It's like something he goes to.
Right.
It's just a talking point for him.
It's like a theme or a bit that he regularly does.
Yeah.
Is it just me, or does this just scream of every 80s movie you can possibly think of, where you've got the super douchey, antagonist and the kind of lovable loser protagonist? It's like, it reminds me of the South Park episode, Stan Darsh, where he's learning how to ski, and the douchey ski bum comes and challenges him to, isn't that dark?
Oh, they go up to Aspen for like a skiing weekend, and kids find themselves just kind of like enmeshed in like a really like a bog standard like 80s like
yeah
exactly, and it just screams of that to me. Like it couldn't have written these characters more stereotypical 80s, I don't know, comedy, R-rated comedy movie kind of thing. It just felt too, I believe it was all real. I do. Sure. But I think, Eric, to your point, like I feel like they played it up a little too much to make it even semi-relatable, or I don't know.
Think about it. These people, they clearly live in a bubble. And nobody's fucking, prodded that bubble for a long time. Even all the other people that are like, hey, I got the second highest world score for Centipede. This guy got like bald with a dent in his head. I was like, shit, he looks like a cabinet fell on him or something. But it's like all these wacky people that all live in this bubble. And then Billy is kind of like the top dog. So
Right.
they have,
And then
these more
you have this
expensive
outsider
villas.
come in with like a college degree and a normal
Yeah.
haircut.
Who's this son of a bitch with like a family and 2 kids, and
Looks like he showers.
he's got a house. He owns a house. That's amazing. He owns his own cabinet. Who's this rich son of a bitch?
Mm.
I have to bring up the best scene, by the way. This is the scene that made me laugh. I also watched this movie pretty late. It's like 1 a.m. I power napped it after work one day, and so I stayed up, watched this 1 a.m. It's the scene where I guess, Brian Koo gets his hands on the tape. Like the grandma in Florida drops it off. He gets the tape and he calls like a viewing party at like his trailer or whatever, and invites all the cool guys from like Twin Galaxies, and they show up. And then while they're there getting ready, they're hyping up watching the tape. Billy calls them. He calls up Brian. He's like, hey Brian, who's there? Like, he's all excited, like, who's watching the tape? Is Walter there? Is these guys, all these guys there? And he goes, hey Brian, is Todd there? Can I talk to Todd? And he's just like, oh, Billy, yeah, Todd's here. Yeah, I believe he's in the middle of a ladybug game. I don't think we want to interrupt him. And then it cuts to this fat, greasy dude with a ponytail, yellow wife beater, and jeans. And he's sitting there, and he's just smiling as he's playing Ladybug. Holy shit. That broke me. I was like, this is like the coolest guy in the room. Todd playing Ladybug.
Todd playing Ladybug and his wife beater.
Good God. Like,
I thought the funny part.
Stay home.
Nice. I thought one of the funny parts is when Brian Coe was like, looks like Weeby's gonna make it to the kill screen. And he was like, he couldn't, like, he was like, oh, I was supposed to be the second one to be able to make it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the only part of the movie where I was invested. I was like, oh man, I can't wait to see this guy's face when he loses that opportunity. I can't wait.
The crumbling. He
his
shatters
whole
on camera. And they linger on it for about maybe 12 seconds, but it felt like an infinity to me. It was so amazing.
Chef's kiss. Loved it.
Oh, he slams the trunk in the parking lot. I was like, little bitch.
The crazy level of just dead silent passive aggression that happens anytime Steve is playing Donkey Kong in a public place and one of those guys comes up behind him and just kind of stands there and he's like, hi Steve.
Yeah.
Playing Donkey Kong, huh? Man, that's something
Steve
you're doing.
Sanders wrote that strategy guide on being good at Donkey Kong. I want to know what his highest score is. This is how you get 250,000.
Mm-hmm.
So, being that we're all at least originally from the New England area, have any of you ever been to Fun Spot? Because it's in New Hampshire.
No.
Hour and 45-minute drive from Boston. I was going to pitch this at the end of the episode, but maybe if we ever have the chance, road trip podcast.
So I've been there.
Oh, really? Oh, no way.
I've actually been there 2 or 3 times.
Wow.
Yep. Not because of, certainly not because of this movie or the lore. I had no idea that the fun spot that I had been to was in any way connected to any of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When the first time it pops up on screen in the movie, I'm like, holy shit, I've been there. Like, I probably played that Donkey Kong machine. Like, yeah.
Oh, cool.
It's a pretty cool place. I mean, I gotta say, it is a fun spot, hence the name. It would be a blast for the 4 of us to go and like eat shitty pizza and play stupid video games.
They have like go-karts too?
Yeah, they do. They do.
Okay.
At least I don't know if they do anymore. I know that they used to. I think
I looked it up after the first time I watched this movie, and I'm like, they got a ton of cabinets. I love to check it out, and then just never panned out.
It's a pretty fun place. It really is. It is.
Podcast field trip, and maybe it's something we can think about at some point.
Yeah, I think it could be fun.
Pod trip.
So yeah, I guess we've kind of talked about some of these other things, but just rapid fire. So is this a healthy way to contend with a job loss? Are either of these guys in any way sympathetic in their behavior at all?
I mean, I wrote this this question sort of specifically, me being the one non-father on the show, but obviously Mitchell was kind of made out to be a villain at the time, but what did you three guys as dads think about Steve as a dad?
It's friggin' healthy. That was my conclusion. I was like, that's healthy. He's found something to focus on to take away from like losing his job, and
him playing in his garage.
Yeah,
fine. I think, if he wants to take a couple of hours on Sunday afternoon instead of watching football or whatever else and go out, sit on his little cabinet and play his video game, great. When his kid comes up to him and says, I need you to wipe my butt because he's clearly got, feces all over him. And the guy's basically like, I'm in the middle of this game. I can't help you, son. Fuck that guy. Like,
I don't know, man. Have you had that question be posed to you before? Dad, can you wipe my butt?
I mean, sure. I've got two kids. Right? Yeah, of course.
I've got a 9-year-old that still asks me to wipe his butt. And you know what I tell him? Watch a video on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, that's fair.
You tell him, son, I'm podcasting.
That's the use. Yeah. So, and that, I know. I'm on mute, but get the fuck upstairs and wipe your own ass. You crab walk back upstairs. Do not drip on the floor. Your mom just washed it. And get in there and wipe your ass.
Yeah.
And I do not buy wet wipes, by the way. It's bad for the environment. So I make them do it dry.
Get a bidet.
Change your life. Yeah. Get a bidet, man. It'll change your life.
But don't mind if I do.
Quote from Keanu Reeves.
Trust me. It's worth it.
Get a bidet, man. It'll change your life.
Totally.
I've actually heard good things about bidet. A couple of my bandmates were like, yeah, I got a bidet. It's awesome.
Buy the $2,000 one because it heats up the water. If you buy the cheap one, that's $40 because you're trying to save some money. You're going to have a cold, wet ass in January.
I highly recommend, not a sponsor, the I believe it's called the Tushy. It's an add-on to an existing toilet, so it's not a true bidet.
DLC?
It's a DLC to a toilet. And yeah, you just hook it up to your water line, and man, it warms the water for you. And
there you go.
It's great. Love it.
A heated pool.
Fantastic.
It's got a little screen on the side. You can play Donkey Kong while you're taking a dump.
Yeah.
Did Roy Schilt send you that, or it might be rigged?
Could be. Anybody else have anything to say about the?
I'm just like, the thing that kind of sticks out for me is just obviously this guy was had a bit of probably some depression and maybe kind of trauma, like they said about like his he was working at Boeing, which is a very which is a highly accomplished and successful company, and for him to get laid off, like his wife said, like the day they actually kind of closed on their house, and him having to scramble and go back to grad school for a year and end up kind of teaching high school, like it's. Obviously, he was trying, I think, to do something just kind of very focused and simple to kind of take his mind off things. But at the point where people are breaking into your garage and taking photos, when do you say, okay, that's probably enough, and like this is getting like a little bit too weird,
Yeah. That part creeped me out a little bit. Like the wife is at home, Steve's not there, two random guys show up at the door asking to see this cabinet that's in their garage. She doesn't know who these people are. She says no, and then they end up like fucking breaking in anyway, essentially. Like that's just, I don't know, man. If anybody ever did that to me, especially fucking video game nerds, I would be like, I would be on all over them about that. And I'm not a violent person, but I would beat the shit out of somebody if they made my wife feel uncomfortable like that. That would not fly for me. No way.
Yeah. You got to think this was what, 2006, 2007. So at that time, I mean, how easy was it to find somebody's address online? They probably looked at the, return address on like the packager that he sent over with a videotape. And they're like, all right, we know where he lives now. So
they're like, okay, road trip. Right.
Yeah. Road trip. This dude lives nearby. But yeah, that was.
The trailer will be okay for a few days. Tony's there playing Ladybug. No problem.
Yeah, Tony's in there, just delivered his pizza, and he's playing Ladybug.
Yeah, that's weird. Yeah. Go ahead, Naveen. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was just reiterating basically all the things you said. Like, Weeby obviously lost a job, wasn't as great as a father, but at the same time, focus himself on something. Mitchell doesn't seem like a very good person, but through the video, he came off as he'd be there for his kids and their kids' functions and all those things. So he's kind of a family man, but just a douchebag when it came to the actual world of video gaming and trying to, keep his name at the top there. Yeah. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think the movie says about sort of the nature of competition, and then, ethics versus sensationalism, all of that kind of stuff?
So I'll say this before we get into this. And I think it's such a niche thing to be like, I want to be the high score record, get the high score for Donkey Kong. I want to be the record holder. And there's so few people out there in the world, especially in 2007, that are like, I'm gonna compete for this. So you would think that Billy Mitchell would eat humble pie and he'd be like, wow, there's somebody just like me that cares this much about Donkey Kong, that we connect on this. So it would be healthy competition because they're trying to, it's like a Ryu Ken kind of thing. They're like both trying to like one up each other, but at the same time, share the tips on what they've done or they figured out.
Plus, you have to kind of figure like a new dark horse, like talented player coming into like a world.
There's
like
nobody else. Brian
kind of just get good PR for the hobby. That it's
Brian Koo got his high score was what, like 400,000. He's nowhere close. So, and somebody outside that circle that comes in, this kind of badass dude that he's done all this stuff, and it's like, I don't know. It goes the opposite direction, and I thought it was bullshit.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that even within something, even within kind of like these subcultures that are just kind of nerdy and insular and just about playing old school arcade games and trying to get a high score, it still does turn into kind of bullshit Lord of the Flies kind of just sort of male sort of social hierarchies where there's one alpha male lunatic on top. And then there's a bunch of like followers that kind of crowd around him.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of it's about fuck with the outsider, fuck with like the strangers and the people we don't know. Keep the people who aren't part of our tribe outside in kind of one way or the other.
Remember too, his record was untouched for like 25 years.
Right.
So he's had all that time in between where nobody's even come close, and he just kind of parades around as the chosen one.
Yeah.
So for somebody to touch it after all that time.
Mm-hmm. And particularly like a guy who doesn't really seem like he was part of that world until he got like laid off from his job.
Dude, thank God. Avoid Billy Mitchell's world.
I hear his hot sauce is pretty good though. You can get it on Amazon.
Ricky's?
Yeah.
I thought he started that, but it looks like his parents actually they bought a restaurant called Ricky's. Yeah. And then they start the mother, Billy Mitchell's mother, came up with the recipe for the hot sauce. So he had nothing to do with it. He just pushes it as his family's hot sauce.
I would say, I mean, listen, competition and competitive spirit is not inherently a bad thing. I mean, it can be a great motivator, and in moderation, it can be pretty healthy. To have a sense of competitiveness in whatever it is that you do, whether it's Donkey Kong or the solar industry or the music store or whatever, being a teacher, whatever it is, like that stuff is not inherently bad. But when it's, I guess, combined with ego and tribalism
and
then maybe also perhaps monetized, or if not monetized, at least rewarded or awarded with something like a Guinness World Record or something like that, it can get unhealthy and it can get weird really fast.
Yeah.
And Eric, your point about, and I didn't really think about this until you said it, the fact that Mitchell went, over 2 decades of being the guy and not knowing any different, basically just everywhere he went, people knew him as the greatest Donkey Kong player that ever existed. And, there wasn't anybody that was anywhere even close to being in his league. He was like a superhero. Right. And then all of a sudden this random dude, comes out of nowhere and steals his thunder after 2.5 decades of being the only guy in town.
Right.
all the stuff.
And a random dude who seems to just have no ulterior motive, wasn't really kind of going for. It's something he kind of wanted to do, but he wasn't really trying to get famous off of this. It wasn't in the service of something else. He was just a really good player that seemed honest and worked really, really hard on this.
He had no like airs about him. He didn't have a persona that he was trying to, put out there. He wasn't, you could tell, I mean, it wasn't like he was going to start selling t-shirts or hot sauce or anything like that. He just was like, I fucking like Donkey Kong and I'm going to play it until I'm the best Donkey Kong player that I can be, which in turn also, made him the best Donkey Kong player that there was, at least for a period of time.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that Billy Mitchell, after, all that time of being the only guy, the chosen one, all of a sudden having competition and somebody beating him out of nowhere, somebody who's in their little niche like he is, where clearly the only thing he's got going for him is being the number one Donkey Kong player. You take that away and all of a sudden it's like, well, then who am I now? Like, what?
Yeah.
Right. What else do I have? I work in my parents' restaurant or for my parents' restaurant or whatever. I got nothing.
Think about the first 20 minutes where they're showing where he flew to Japan and he's being awarded by, I think he have a picture with Shigeru Miyamoto? Or maybe it was, I don't know. He all these Japanese people,
one like the
game
programmers or like the producers that come.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, they flew him to Japan. He's been in these other documentaries talking about Donkey Kong. He's the go-to guy. And then he also held the record for Donkey Kong Jr. too, as well as in Pac-Man. He had a pretty good score. So yeah, he's the guy. Yeah, I can imagine. It's kind of like, he's just going on with life. And then somebody just walks in on his territory and he's just like, who the fuck are you? Right. Like, what are you doing here? I'm the guy. I'm the guy people come to.
For me, one of the funniest scenes in the movie actually is it's like 10 minutes before the end, but they finally show footage of Steve and Billy in the same room, and I wrote down in my notes. It's when Steve is at the arcade in Florida, and they were waiting 3 days for like Billy to actually kind of show up and actually like compete with him in person at Donkey Kong. I wrote down in my notes, Billy appears behind Steve like jaws popping out when Brody is chumming off the back of the boat. Like, is there an
Well said. But also, was there ever a more awkward, like, pseudo meet cute between two people? Like, I mean, he's in the same room. He hovers around him for however long. It seems like forever.
Steve just goes Billy, and Billy just kind of stares at him for a minute, and then says to his wife, "There's certain people I don't want to spend too much time with," and then the two of them walk off.
He should have. I think he interpreted it as like a Gremlin's voice, where it was like, was it Stripe? And he's just like, Billy, and then he's just like, "Oh shit!"
It's just so weird. The whole thing is weird.
Yeah. Something I didn't mention earlier, I want to bring up because it has to be included here, but. Talking about like competition and how niche this thing is, trying to be like Donkey Kong world champion or whatever. I love, you guys remember the scene with his student? They're talking about to his students about like, this is I think right after he confesses, what he's been doing in his free time, and then he has that one student. She's like, "Oh, they're like, did you know he got this world record in this game?" And she's like, "It's Donkey Kong, isn't it?" Oh man, I didn't know it was a world record. All the teachers here are so weird.
Yeah.
I was seriously thinking about watching this with Caleb, and after that I was just like, nah, I don't think he would get this.
That was the girl in the Invader Zim t-shirt, if I remember.
Yeah,
right.
exactly. Yeah. If it was like you mentioned, like League of Legends or something, then she'd be like, sweet.
Right.
So have any of you ever dedicated yourselves to a weird or obscure goal like this one?
Who wants to go first?
Does buying a music store in an economically depressed city in central Massachusetts count?
Yes.
I'll let you know. I'll let you know how it pans out.
All right.
I heard the hot dogs next door are delicious.
That's what they tell me. That's what they tell me. Still haven't had one.
You should offer one with every box of reeds people buy.
Yeah. Yeah. What about anybody else?
If you go for the Van Doren reads, you also get relish.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I kind of fell backwards into something like this a few years ago when I was like working in New York. We had kind of a the nonprofit I was working for. There was everybody at that place was sort of smarter and Ivy League and just way more talented and accomplished than I could ever kind of hope to be in my life. And people were kind of working there in the capacity of sort of being scientists, mathematicians, astronomers, chemists, engineers, whatever else. But a lot of these people also had kind of side creative things that they were doing where, they would be like actually also like accomplished kind of either athletes or painters or people that would kind of would do music or kind of civil work or kind of whatever else. And we had at the nonprofit like a monthly newsletter that the HR department would put out, where at the end of the newsletter they would always profile a foundation artist in residence, where they would talk about one of these kind of cool New York people and some outside like the work they were doing for the foundation, some really interesting sort of side thing that were accomplished. Like, it'd be sort of like, this person is like actually like a world ranked badminton player. This person just had like a small gallery opening in Chelsea or like something like that. So my first winter living in New York, I think I kind of mentioned this earlier. I had started falling off video games like a little bit. I'm like, it's too much screen time. I want to get into something kind of more analog. And this was a little bit before I discovered and kind of really got excited about board games. But for about like a month and a half, I was really into Japanese paper crafting. And basically what that is not origami. This is
it's a little more complex.
I'm aware of what origami
paper
is.
Crafting.
This is
paper crafting.
But this is thing where you kind of go on Japanese websites, and this is the paper kind of artistry is very, very big in that country. And what you do is you download these designs, you print them out in like matte photo paper, and then all you basically do is you get like a rubber drafting board, an X-Acto knife, and like some Elmer's glue. And you just kind of you spend your time kind of cutting out these designs and folding everything up, and there's sort of very, very simple things you can make of like kind of like you could fold these things and you got like a zebra or like a little sushi box or the Arc de Triomphe, and they're kind of small and colorful and charming, and it's kind of a chill and sort of relaxing thing to kind of just kind of come home and cut these things up and kind of glue them together, and just you kind of put them like on your bookcase, whatever else. But then I got really, really into it at one point. I started downloading like these more kind of like more sort of advanced designs. I ended up making a Japanese what's called like a hina matsuri, which is like a little decorative thing Japanese people put out for like the spring holiday that has these little king and queen dolls with all these kind of traditional decorations. And I also ended up making a little kind of it's a little purely paper, it's just purely made out of paper dollhouse of like a sushi restaurant. Like the sushi restaurant had all these kind of little tiny details, sort of kind of tea lamps outside, and like these little kind of chairs and sort of sushi bars you put together, and like these little kind of bento boxes you kind of put on the counter of the else. And it was fun. I found it kind of scratched that itch of kind of doing something that was a little bit more kind of creative and like a little bit more analog that I was looking for. But it was just some dummy, easy thing I kind of fell into that I was just kind of using to kind of pass my free time.
It's funny because you're talking about this, and then I remember you showing me all the stuff you're making, and I'm like, where's this going? How far is this going to go? But the weird thing is I don't know if you guys seen the last couple years, if you go to like any craft store, they have these little sets you can buy, and they give you all the components to make it, and it'll be like a cafe or a bakery or a bookshop, and you make everything. Everything's made out of like paper or like little small pieces of like wood, and you can fashion all like the different furniture inside like a bookstore, for example, and then they have all the books, and you can take these thin pieces of wood and you you cut out the covers for each of the books and then glue them on, and you put them all on the shelf individually. Mm-hmm. And the instructions are, I bought one. I gave up after, a couple days because it's just so tedious.
Right.
You just need, I also have shit going on in my life. I'm not going to sit there and put little paper covers on fucking, pieces of wood. Mm-hmm. So it was just like, it didn't make sense to me. But thinking about this, if you had kept going with that and you had discovered one of these, I don't think it's a far leap from doing
absolutely not. And you're describing this. Maybe you should go to Michael's after we finish this podcast.
Take a look. Yeah, downtown where I live, I've seen them. They're a little pricey, but I also first saw them for work. I had to go to Shanghai, and I went to a mall to buy stuff for the kids. I found a Toys R Us there, and outside there, I saw this little place that was selling like Japanese stuff, like little blind boxes and plushies and all that. And they had those sets there, and I was like, that looks like something fun to do for a weekend. And I didn't realize how how much it's broken up into just sheets of paper with all the covers on it. And you have to cut each one out. I thought it was a little less involved.
Right. So what ultimately ended up happening with this, and again, this is a thing I've been doing for like a month and a half, but I had like all these kind of paper craft designs I'd done, and it's like, they're just kind of sitting around the apartment, but I was like, why don't I kind of take these into work and kind of put them like on like the shelf that I have at work, and I can kind of be like a little fun kind of decorative thing for the office. People, my coworkers, after I kind of brought like all these little kind of paper craft kind of doll houses and things that I kind of made in, people started kind of coming in the office. They started like losing their minds. I think, especially because this is Japanese, especially because it's like a lot of these things are kind of based on sort of traditional folk art, and because especially in the States, this is not a thing people do generally. This is a much more sort of popular kind of like hobby or pastime like in Japan, but it's pretty much kind of non-existent like in the States. People started coming in the office, getting really excited about it, and then HR contacted me, and they were like, "We want to profile you next month for our artist in residence at the foundation." And that was just,
and all the girls in the office started moaning. They're like, "Oh yeah."
That was the funniest shit in the world to me, because the person who had been profiled the previous month had just performed at the fucking Lincoln
Not
Center.
A dry pair of pants in that fucking office building. John's like, "This is Hina Matsuri. Tell me more."
No,
sounds boring.
they're just like, paper craft some wet my butt.
Yeah.
So that's you sort of think about like a completely just I didn't kind of set out with that goal to compete with all these people who are like actually artists and actually sort of committed and put their 10,000 hours and kind of did things. So if I think about that question, that's the first thing that came to mind.
Good for you.
Anything on your end?
Not much. I guess going back to video games, I know I really liked Guitar Hero. So tried with that for a while and it was all personal records, really. It's nothing I wanted to go into some kind of international or national competition for. And then another one would be just... You
didn't set the North American record on YYZ?
No, yeah, did not.
Yeah. Guitar Hero, I could not beat any like difficult levels. I could only do like the medium hardness levels. Like anything beyond that. This is for PS2, I think. PS2, PS3. Whenever it first came out. Yeah, PS2. I remember playing that when it first came out. I loved it. And I was like, the easy ones, got that one down. The medium ones, a little challenge, but I can get through some of the solos. The hard ones,
it ramps up crazy. It becomes harder than playing like some of those songs on actual guitar.
Was it Tom Sawyer that they did? Was one of them or something?
YYZ is like the crazy rush song.
Is the crazy one? Okay.
Yeah. And then the other one is just once being able to do a 5K under 20 minutes.
Oh, nice.
Never made it.
Never made it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that kind of wraps up the conversation about the movie. I think it's a good time to move into our favorite segment, Vigo's Toes. Did anybody find anything interesting or of note about this lovely film?
Did anybody look at the debunking info on Wikipedia?
A little bit, yeah.
World records? Yeah. I
what
tried to capture some of that, but
what do you
I
got?
don't know. So after the movie came out, Steve Wiebe complained. A lot of other people complained about the whole thing with Billy submitting the tape. The tape was sketchy. You saw when they zoomed in on that part showing his score, and it got a little like fuzzy.
Yeah.
I guess also the startup screen in his video looks different than regular Donkey Kong cabinets. And so after the documentary finished, some people complained. And then what happened is Billy did a couple like competitions where he played live, I guess, and got high scores. And so they're like, oh, he's got the record again. He did it. And so I guess enough people looked into this that they realized he was actually using a video game emulator called MAME. I don't know if you guys have heard of MAME before. I built a video game cabinet, and then I think I used MAME initially for it. And MAME is just like it's an emulator. You get ROMs.
OS that you can that you can sort of that lets you sort of run like a ton of like these old school arcades.
It's been around since '97, but I guess they built up this cabinet where they installed MAME on it. And the famous thing about MAME, if you ever played it, if you hit Shift F7, you can create save states. And I forget what button you hit, but you can just keep clicking on that button, like Shift F4 or something, and it allows you to load up that state almost immediately. So what you do is,
it dumps the entire memory state of whatever game you're playing, like out to a file, and it can be that exact instant of the video game could be reloaded.
You can just sit there and say, "Hey, I hit 200,000. I'm going to start here. Oh, I died. I'm going to start again. Keep building my way up. Now I got to a higher level. I'm going to save that again." And so that's how you can easily hit 1 million and you can just take your time with it. You saved it. Go have some dinner, grab a lemonade or 3. And then come back to it all refreshed and ready to play some more Donkey Kong. And I guess he did that for Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr., which he had been playing at some competitions. And so there was a couple lawsuits that were, created because of this. And he had his high scores removed.
His high scores were removed from Twin Galaxies.
Yep,
Galaxies not from Book of World Records, weirdly.
Yeah,
it was
part of the. So
World Records took it back, but then they reinstated it.
Yeah. And then I guess his records still exist in some form, but not in the current listing at Twin Galaxies for the highest scores for Donkey Kong, which is supposed to be the, they monitor all that. But something else I want to bring up is I did watch the South Park episode again. That we've been referencing the whole time. Biddy, which was when Stan's dad ate, for 3 weeks, he ate Nancy Chang's, and he got all constipated, and then he took the world's largest shit.
The South Park episode, for like the guys who haven't seen it, like the core concept is Stan's dad and Bono get in a competition to see who can take the world's largest dump. Yeah.
Jesus.
It's good. It's amazing. It's pretty good.
It's a really good one.
There's also, do you guys ever hear of Regular Show?
Yeah.
Show on Cartoon Network.
Of course.
There's tons of like 80s references in the show. It's about a raccoon and a blue jay. And they have an episode where what it is they're like, oh, I get no respect at work. And their boss pays them with like a bag of coins. And so they end up going, as they're like, screw this, they leave work. They come across this coffee shop they always go to, where they have a new arcade unit called Broken Bones. And there's these high school kids playing, and then they totally trash, the 2 main characters in the game. So they try to get so good at the game that they end up, beating the kids. And then they realize they beat the world record. And then somebody called Garrett Bobby Ferguson, or GBF, appears. And it's an exact likeness of Billy Mitchell's head
Oh,
Just
that's funny.
Huge version
That's
of Billy Mitchell's head.
Mm.
And he's like, "You've broken the universal record. And now we must face off." And so they have this big face off. And during the match, they're, the two main characters about to beat the high score. And then Billy stops and he goes, or Garrett stops and he goes, "Please don't do it." He's like, "I spent so much time playing this game and, my wife left me and I lost my job and I have nothing going on for myself." And he's just sobbing. And he's like, "Please just give me this. I have nothing else to live for." And they're like, "Oh, dude, I'm so sorry. You know what?" And they just let their character die. They're like, "You know what? You deserve it. You work so hard for this." And he's like, "Ha ha ha! I cheated. I tricked you." He's like, "I'm not married. Why would I waste my time on something stupid like that?" And he goes and he's playing the game. He dies and he's like, "It doesn't matter. I still won." And then they find out they have an extra life. They go beat him. And the second they beat his score, he just explodes. And there's just brain matter all over the place. And then their boss walks in. He's just like, "You know what? I was going to give you guys respect, but I found out this is how you spend your free time. And I'm also covered in brain matter. So, you know what? Screw it." And then he just takes their money back and leaves.
That's amazing. I'm watching that as soon as we were.
They apparently made a sequel where I guess Garrett Bobby Ferguson's son appears as a junior.
What is the significance of GBF?
I think it was making fun of the fact that he called himself USA.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
GBF.
Got it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else got anything?
Oh, by the way, they got sued for that.
Yeah. A regular show got sued.
Yeah. Cartoon Network got sued for that because it looked just like Billy Mitchell, and they end up dropping the case.
Right. Now, not to extend the Trump analogy too much, but just add that to the pile. Like this guy kind of seems like pretty litigious on top of everything else.
Yeah.
The only other piece of trivia that I want to add in was that I did not know this ahead of time, and maybe I'm a dummy for that fact. Guinness Beer and Guinness Book of World Records are actually one and the same.
Yeah.
What? Really?
I was not aware of this. I had the idea randomly, kind of actually watching part of this movie at a small craft beer bar in Tokyo, and I just had this moment is this a Michelin situation where it's they started publishing the Michelin Guide literally was created so that French people would drive out to the countryside more often, and the Michelin company could sell more tires. That was the entire kind of synergy they came up with. The Guinness Book of World Records was created by a guy who was the director of the Dublin Guinness Beer Factory at the time. The guy was named Sir Hugh Beaver, not making that up. And he basically started the Guinness Book of World Records because what he liked to do his spare time was just hang out at bars and just get into trivia contests with people. But he was always we never had an official thing we could go to settle bets. So that's how the idea Guinness Book of World Records got started.
Did he slap his name on the front of the Guinness Book of World Records and just write Beaver?
Hugh Beaver. No, sir.
Guinness Book of World Records.
Sir Hugh.
Please, sir, may I have another?
I'd sit at that round table.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of stuff about the kill screen also. It's kind of a I have been so jet lagged over the last few days. I actually read through the Donkey Kong memory map and I've read a bunch of the code on the original game.
Whoa.
And the kill screen thing is kind of interesting because basically at level 22, what actually creates the kill screen is they in the documentary they kind of present it as this unknowable kind of mystical thing, but it's actually super simple. It's basically the game has a little equation to set how much time you have to finish a particular board. And when the level goes from level 21 to level 22, that 22 actually breaks the math in that equation a bit, so that the kill screen happens. It does the equation. It's supposed to come out with you have 80 seconds to finish that board, but because like a little bit of like a bug in the code, that level 22 goes into the equation, and instead of the equation spitting out 80 seconds, it spits out 4 seconds. So you have basically when we get to what I think 85th board in the game, every life you have like a 4-second time limit to finish the board, which is like impossible, I guess, even for the best players. But that's the core thing that's kind of creating like that.
So it wasn't designed with an end. It just happened to have an end.
No, it wasn't designed with the bug that's in there is actually very, very easy to fix. And I think it was the kind of thing like nobody at Nintendo, when they're programming this, actually thought to test it, because they're probably like, there's no possible way anybody can play 85 straight Donkey Kong boards. So like, that kind of thing.
2.5 hours of Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
And people are plugging in quarters. Who's going to make it that long?
Right. For like people that are into kind of like the programming side of kind of like retro video game stuff, like that, kill screens are it's kind of an interesting like little subtopic. Like Pac-Man also has a kill screen that's based on almost the exact same thing. Like when the level counter hits a point that nobody actually planned for, because they were like, there's no possible way anybody will actually play Pac-Man for this long. It's basically the level counter gets high enough that it spills over into like another part of the code, and that actually freezes like the entire game.
I can't imagine playing Pac-Man or Donkey Kong or any of those games long enough to sit through and complete them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Better ways to spend your time.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. All right, gentlemen. Well, I think that wraps up.
Quickly. Sorry to cut you off. I thought you guys had more fun facts. I actually have one that I didn't expect. Yeah, you got some more. Did you know Billy was born and grew up in Holyoke, Massachusetts?
No kidding. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. And then he moved. His parents ended up moving to Hollywood, Florida, when he was a little older.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when they bought the business, the restaurant.
Gotcha.
He could only be from Florida.
No, man. He was a healthy, smart, athletic child in Holyoke, Massachusetts, and then they just
Holyoke, Massachusetts, the Worcester of the Pioneer Valley.
That's right.
Yeah. He was hiking all the time. He had, healthy, group of friends that they would play games occasionally, and then Hollywood just broke him. Hollywood, Florida.
Not even the real Hollywood.
Not even. I looked on the website for Ricky's and I was like, oh, they have a location in Hollywood. It doesn't say Florida after it; just says Hollywood. So I was like, wow, that's crazy. He moved up to California, and then I looked at afterwards. I was like, oh no, it's just all Florida.
Yeah.
Ugh.
But you couldn't take the mud out of
Mm.
them.
Nope.
That's the thing about how Holyoke, like, there's just too much lead in the groundwater. Leads to bad decisions.
Yeah.
What did you find, Naveen?
Yeah, I mean, going on with that whole Billy Mitchell as a cheater kind of thing. In the early 80s, there were other high scores, but Billy Mitchell was the scoreboard editor and kind of lost them. So they were kind of lost there with the other high scores. But his scores were reinstated by Twin Galaxies as well in just last year, January 16, 2024.
Whoa.
Twin Galaxies.
The fact this is an ongoing story is one of the amazing things about this.
I'm shocked how many people came out of the woodworks to try to beat that score after seeing Steve do it. They're like,
right,
never even thought about it. I mean, also too, I don't know if you guys have noticed lately how many people are doing speed runs on YouTube.
Yeah,
they live stream this kind of stuff, or at live events they'll have people in front of an audience of other people just do a speed run of like Ghost and Goblins or something, and they'll beat the game twice, because you have to beat it twice in order to beat it, and they'll do it for Nintendo in like 14 minutes, which I'll spend like 6 hours just trying to beat it once.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is part of the reason that I wanted to watch King of Kong, because I thought it was kind of like a bit of a piece with a Grizzly Man, these, at the time, this is 2007 to 2000. One was 2005, the other 2007. At the time, like these were kind of both about sort of like these sort of niche weirdo characters. One, a guy just super obsessed with just doing something pretty much impossible in video games, and the other, a guy obsessed with just doing really dangerous, stupid shit and kind of filming himself the entire time. These were kind of like it's just in the in the mid-aughts, it's like oh look at these weirdos. This is kind of interesting. And now 2025, this is like 70% of YouTube is just one of those things or the other.
Yeah. People going on Twitch and stuff, just playing. It's crazy. And then people donate because they love people getting frustrated about games and saying absurd shit. And they're like, this person's awesome. Yeah. It's like, we did that for free back in the day.
Again, look this up. Streaming currently a $2 billion a year industry. Then
as soon as they monetize that, like that's nuts. That is so crazy. I've been doing the wrong thing with my life all this time.
Yeah.
I should have bought the full collection.
If only we had known.
Get back on eBay, dude.
Yeah, I know. You know what? I started collecting those games in 2017 when I actually started making some money after getting out of debt. After COVID, the value of everything doubled. There was one game I wanted to buy. I wanted to buy. It was called Little Samson. It's a very obscure title for Nintendo that came out with Super Nintendo. It had been out for like a couple years. And I remember I was like, $1,200. It's just not worth it. Why would I spend $1,200 on it? You go online, you can't even find a decent copy for $2,500. Everybody jumped on that hobby during COVID.
Wow.
Yeah. Even Contra, right? Contra, everybody that has a Nintendo probably has a copy of Contra. It used to be you could buy it at like Funko Land for like 50 cents or something. People are selling it for like $30 on eBay now. Because it's such a fun classic game that everybody's like, I have to have a copy of this if I want to play old Nintendo games.
And it's that famous cheat code is right there in it too that everybody knows.
Code.
Iconic for that reason.
Yeah.
To me, that's the best Nintendo game ever. For my money, that's the best one.
Yeah. I didn't own it, but I had a friend that did, and I used to play this shit out. I've never beaten it, by the way. Have you beaten it?
Oh, yes.
Have you really? Yeah. Without using the code?
I've only beat it with the cheat code. I've never beat it.
I was going to say, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Only, of course. No, only with the 30 lives or 25 lives or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's still, I love that game. I would play that game today if I still had it.
Yep.
Yeah. My son Ray, he played that. He played it a couple times. He played that Ninja Gaiden. He did not go back to Ninja Gaiden, although he did like the fact that it was ninjas. But Contra, he's just like, let's play that shooting game again. And I'm like, yes, we're playing.
It's just hard.
It is hard. And the worst part about it, it's so unforgiving. I mean, you can continue as many times as you want. And I've beaten it before. It took me about 3 hours, but so it's doable. But if you ever play Ninja Gaiden 3 for Nintendo, that was the only one where they didn't have unlimited continues. They have 3. So you just got to be really friggin' good at that game in order to beat it.
Your son was like, Dad, let's play Contra again. And you're like, you're the best child. Unlimited wiping as much as you want.
Those words did escape my mouth multiple times.
Cool glass of lemonade afterwards.
All right. I guess before we go, though, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't state it, but I found it. I don't know if you guys found it. The newest record that I found was June 8th, 2021 by Robert Lakemar. 1,272,800.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember reading someplace like Twin Galaxies actually hired a few computer scientists to kind of figure out Donkey Kong, because it's so randomized, it doesn't have a possible max score like the way games like Pac-Man actually does. But the current standing theory is the max Donkey Kong score played by a human, assuming best case reflexes, is about 1.2 million points. And then if you have it played by an AI that can assess everything that's happening in the game frame by frame by frame before it hits the kill screen, they think probably the absolute top possible score is around 2 million or so.
Wow.
We're halfway there.
No, I was going to say, there's no timer on it, right? For the stages?
No, there's a board timer. That's actually what, like I said.
Oh, okay.
That's
Oh,
what
yeah,
caused
you
the
mentioned that
frustration
with like the
finally,
4
because
seconds. Yeah.
when you get to the 85th board, it fucks up the map.
Over, I don't know how to maximize that score. I think jumping over barrel only gives you like 100 points.
How do you keep that in your head? How do you keep that in your head that you have like this many seconds to finish like this thing for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No idea.
And time those springs or whatever.
Sure.
And they're so shitty.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, now I think we've officially gotten to the end of the King of Kong. Any closing thoughts or coming attractions you guys want to talk about?
We've hit the episode's proverbial kill screen, as it were.
We've hit the kill screen.
So Naveen, I believe next week is our next record is your pick.
Next, so next episode. Actually, next week I'm not going to be here. I don't know if you guys are going on. If we've decided what you're.
We'll have to figure out what we're doing
in 2 weeks.
Next week might be a different theme, but yeah. So in a couple weeks, Hitman is my pick. While I've never ever played the game, I know it was based off the game. I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. Remember watching it and enjoying it many years ago. And this is the first one, the Timothy Olyphant version. Because I believe they came out with another movie after that, but I have not seen that or anything.
Right.
But yeah, it's my pick that I remember enjoying, but I've only watched it that once. So I'd be kind of curious to see what it's like now. Maybe it's another Opportunity Knocks issue coming up. So we'll see what happens. But we'll see what
looking forward to it. Like I said, just in kind of dealing with my cold and my jet lag, I downloaded like the game like a few days ago. Eric, it's like $25 like right now. It's got all the levels from Hitman 1, 2, and 3, like 25 giant, absolute sort of massive things that are just like these sort of huge sandboxes that you can you're there's a level where you're at a Paris fashion show, or there's a level where you're climbing along the outside of a skyscraper in Dubai, or like there's another one where you're at like a little Italian seaside village. There's one where you're in like a suburban town in Vermont, and Andy,
what's the premise of the game? And while you're there enjoying the scenery, murder somebody.
That's the premise of the game.
Okay, there we go.
I've never played it. Barcode on your head.
Yeah.
It's super fun too, because like you can get to the point where like if you do sort of like you can get through all of the obvious ways of killing, your targets, and then you can start to get really creative with it.
Real silly. Yeah.
It's just super silly, and like I mentioned it in our group chat, but like you can knock people out with muffins, you can kill people with dead fish, like you can hit people with bananas. It's just like they clearly built in all kinds of just absolute nonsense into that game to make it infinitely replayable. And it's all this, like every screen is massive, so you've got all kinds of options. There's different people you can interact with. There's different ways you can get found out. You can try to do runs where you're never seen. You can set, things where you don't change your outfit at all throughout the entire thing. So you just have to be Hitman throughout the entire thing, as opposed to Hitman dressed as a clown, or Hitman dressed as, I don't know.
Like a Saudi sheik or something like that.
Yeah, just all kinds of random stuff. It's a lot of fun.
There's DLC for an older game that I think is kind of just folded into like the current base game they have out now, where you have to kill Jean-Claude Van Damme and his 7 clones in an underground military facility.
Oh, I haven't done that one.
Yeah,
that sounds like fun.
Excellent.
6 are named Guile.
The other are Predator.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's good pull.
Right, well, excellent record. Interesting film. I'm going to say interesting, and that's about as much praise as I'm willing to give it. But it was a fun conversation, at least.
Does anybody want to do the Mr. Awesome quote before we go?
I don't.
You're awesome.
I don't know it.
I can do it. I wrote it down. You must
Please.
have written it down too. All right.
Please.
Do I have to do it in the voice?
Yes, you have to
Yes.
do it in the voice.
So this was from a quote from Mr. Awesome's Guide to Girls. Let's see. I want you to remember, no punk bastard ever got a gnarly piece of poontang by being sensitive and considerate.
Words to live by, gentlemen.
I bid you adieu, sir. Q. Beaver.
What is
Nothing
happening in
else
New
to be said.
Hampshire?
Nothing else can be said. We have to leave it at that.
Yep, I'm hitting the kill screen.
Yep.
Exactly.
That's
Wah,
it.
wah, wah.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right,
Catch everybody soon.
All right.
All right, take
Yeah,
it easy.
take care, guys.
Adios.
Stay well, Jenny.